One of the most terrifying 911 calls was made on this road right behind me.
Union County 911.
What the fuck?
What was that, sir?
That's not human! That's not human!
Eerily after dark, where they are not meant to be, little green men become visible upon patrol feeds in rigid shapes just outside the headlamp of the patrol vehicle. This video features a series of unnerving videos of unreal creatures. Each clip seems creepier than the previous one. The last video was recorded by the police and remains a mystery to this day. You do not want to miss the last video, as it will stand out in any officer's memory. But before we dive deeper, what chilling encounter forced officers to question everything they knew about life beyond our world? The Eerily Moore alien photo. The officer, who had previously worked as a policeman, was on patrol at dawn when he came across a little green-skinned alien with a disproportionately large head while walking in the foggy moor. The officer took one photograph before the alien seemingly cautioned him using a hand gesture before sprinting off up the hill as an unaccompanied UFO washed away at his back. As he continued traveling through the dense, dark fog, the officer was startled to find an extremely tiny green alien that had an unusually large head with long, thin arms appearing on the same pathway ahead of him. The officer's instincts prompted him to lift a camera to take a photo, but after a split second, the creature turned to face him, waving its hand at him and giving him a warning look before making a sprint up the hill and disappearing completely into the fog. Moments later, the officer claimed to have observed an unknown UFO emerging from the moor and quickly taking off without making any sound whatsoever. After the photographs were processed, the Kodak lab technicians found no evidence of tampering with the developed photos. The blurry photos of the obscure being on the hill were determined to be too out of focus for reliable identification. Supporters of the photograph contend it contains one of the most compelling UFO photographs ever taken by a police officer. However, critics believe the image shows a person or, potentially, a false image created for purposes of perpetrating a hoax. But if one unexplained sighting can challenge reality this much, what happens when an even stranger mystery appears in the desert next? The desert giraffes of Mexico. State Patrol was on a vacant road near the Nuevo León border when the officers came across 3 giraffes running across the arid landscape. This has raised many questions about how the animals ever got to that area, as there are no zoos or safari parks in the vicinity. On their drive down a dusty road in the early morning, the state reaction team encountered silhouettes of 3 giraffes running free in the semi-arid area. They had no zoos, safari parks, or private collections nearby, so they stopped and stared in disbelief as their patrol vehicles went slowly. The awkwardness continued throughout their radio communications while they attempted to understand how this was possible, who may have brought the animals to the area, and how long they could possibly have been in the area. Some accounts suggested that these giraffes had been brought to the area as exotic pets and had adapted to their surroundings over the years. The bigger question that remains in the minds of the officers witnessing this is what other forms of exotic wildlife may travel these less used roadways. The aggressive deer, Georgia. While searching for 2 wanted men in a wooded area, officers encountered an unexpected and aggressive deer. The officers recorded their encounter on their body camera, which shows the officers casually standing near a cluster of trees illuminated by a flashlight when the deer spontaneously charged at them with a surprising amount of violence, surprising even the most experienced law enforcement officers. The body camera footage also captures the moment the officer stumbled backward from the charging deer, confused by what had happened. The deer made a loud snorting noise, lowered its head, and ran back into the woods as if startled by something more alarming. Later, the police department of Sandy Springs released this footage and stated that local deer have always behaved in a very predictable, peaceful manner. The investigation has been compromised by many variables, but all seem to agree that the deer acted out of extreme stress, an undiagnosed illness, or, as is often the case with wild animals, a bad situation with a long-term effect. Overall, this underscores how unpredictable the outcome of a search in the dark can be. Children behind the gate, Nayarit. Officer Jus Vargas and his partner responded to an emergency call for help at the elementary school sometime around 3 a.m. Upon arriving at the school, Officer Vargas's partner spotted 2 figures behind the bars of the outside hallway, watching them closely as they passed by. When they got closer, the two children turned and ran away without saying a word. Once inside the school, the officers looked around to see who had been playing in the school that night. They did not see any signs of a child or adult having been at the school just before the officers arrived. No footprints were found, no doors were left open, and there was no indication that someone had entered the school while the officers were inside waiting for help. The wailing woman. After receiving many reports from the people living in the wilderness area about hearing the scream of a woman crying in the dark of night, an officer patrols that area very cautiously with a flashlight, scanning the roadway. It is eerily quiet. Suddenly, the silence is broken by an excruciating, elongated, and piercing scream that is not human. The officer freezes in place, spins around, and watches as his vehicle camera captures him taking his breath at the same time as the scream. Another scream pierces through the darkness. The officer takes a big step back in shock and tries to turn around and run back to his police car as quickly as possible. The exact moment when he climbs into the car is recorded by the dash camera. After slamming the door shut, the officer keeps his eyes on the tree line. Many residents have said for years that La Llorona is around, but that sound made that officer jittery. Minneapolis UFO sighting. While on patrol in a typical Minneapolis community, 3 police officers encountered an object in the sky. The initial appearance of the object was as a large, brightly lit area above the homes. The officers watched the object sitting directly above them without making any noise or moving around as an aircraft would. The object started to rise slowly as if to view everything below it without any sound and remained in a perfectly vertical ascending position. "I have never seen a helicopter do that," exclaimed one officer. Another officer recording the object observed that it started to lose brightness until it completely disappeared into the clouds. Then, something even more extraordinary happened. The object that had been rising steadily suddenly sped sideways through the entire view of the officers in a fraction of a second and completely disappeared again. There was no explosion or smoke left behind, and there were no reports of an explosion, only the report of 3 officers and video of what no known type of aircraft could do. Phantom car through fence 1. Not long after, a patrol car began following behind a car that appeared to have run through a stop sign. The car followed along an empty road while increasing its speed intermittently. Officers activated a camera located inside the patrol car, and all of this was filmed. At some point, the car being chased suddenly turned abruptly onto a side road, headed toward a fence adjacent to an industrial property. The officers expected the car would stop, skid, or take some other action they could make sense of. However, at no time did the car appear to slow down or attempt to stop. The patrol car was barely a second behind the vehicle when the suspect's vehicle crashed through the fence. When the patrol car arrived, the fence was still intact and locked. Upon searching the area, the officers found nothing. Neither the area surrounding the fence nor any access points in the area for vehicles had any traces of the suspect's vehicle. The final report classifies the incident as an impossible escape. The officers who witnessed it live that night felt something had crossed over a barrier that appeared impossible to cross. The disappearing detainee. While conducting a traffic stop, a patrol car's camera recorded a woman standing by the side of the patrol car with a female officer. The officer was speaking with the woman in a calm, controlled manner. He asked her if there were any drugs or alcohol in her vehicle, to which the woman replied, "No," as is typical of this type of traffic stop. The officer then asked the woman to wait and found out that her vehicle's registration had expired. He said, "What the? Sarah?" And when he turned to look for Sarah, she had vanished. There was no indication that she left through an open door, and there was no sign of movement, shadowing, or sound, as this happened in a split second. The officer was then forced to investigate the area where Sarah was when she disappeared. He looked elsewhere, including under the patrol car, the area where Sarah had previously been standing, and behind the patrol car. He found nothing. It was almost as if Sarah had been erased from the scene. The police department's record states this incident was an inexplicable disappearance while in jail. To this day, no explanation fits what the video clearly shows. Phantom car through fence 2. While patrolling, a police car came across a car that was suspiciously driving around a factory/industrial area without any headlights. When they turned their lights on to perform a standard traffic stop instead of stopping, the driver took off at a high rate of speed as if he knew exactly where he was going. The driver headed straight towards a metal fence, which was the only barrier separating the roadway from the restricted property, and sped through it without any change in speed and without having hit or slowed down for the protective barrier. When the officers finally arrived at the scene, a very short time later, they discovered that the fence was perfectly intact with absolutely no tire tracks or fingerprints and no other escape routes in sight. The officers were left wondering just how a material object could pass through an impenetrable barrier. But if a car can vanish through solid metal, what else is lurking just beyond what our eyes can grasp, waiting to be seen? The Miami Mall creature. It was a night of chaos when police shut down an entire block with flashing police lights. Many witnesses reported seeing a large person moving around a shopping center. Many witnesses also reported seeing this person move in the shadows and try to avoid the light. Police surrounded the parking lot, and multiple phones recorded what looked to be a person crouched behind some type of barrier. What was on these phones appeared to be an outline that changed between frames, almost like it was visible, but it did have an unnatural blue glow from the lights. While there were many eyewitness accounts, the official response from authorities labeled it as a false alarm. No official video of this event has been made available to the public, and no additional information has been provided by officials. However, every witness to this event reported seeing some type of tall, human-like figure, which continues to lead people to believe that something other than the usual happened that night. Isolated valley screams. An officer ventured into the remote area of a valley where residents had previously proclaimed to have heard strange cries for some weeks. There was nothing but wind around him until there was a long, shrill sound piercing through the silence. As he steadied himself for another sound, he raised his camera towards the direction of the wailing to document it. And at that exact moment, another scream came towards him, closer than other times, with greater urgency. He whispered to the air, asking who needed assistance, and heard no human voice in return. Instead, he felt as though the echo bounced off the rocks around him, as though both of those screams came from every point in the valley simultaneously. Dallas, metallic scream. After receiving a late-night telephone call from a woman who claimed there had been screaming coming from the open fields nearby, 2 officers arrived at the scene. Upon exiting their patrol vehicle, they noticed how alive the darkness felt. It felt as if the air was shifting. Suddenly, there was a loud metallic scream that pierced through the night. It sounded like a combination of a human voice and machinery. The officers' body cameras shook. Flashlights flickered, and they instinctively retreated to their vehicle as the sound continued to reverberate throughout the dark open fields. At the police station, audio files related to this event disappeared from the records, with no indication as to why. If the scream was not issued by a human, then someone has erased all trace of it. Pale woman in the woods. A female appeared in a white dress within the woods. The figure had long, dark black hair that partially covered her face. The female sat silently on the ground for some moments. She had no expression. She made no sounds, nor did she move. Body-worn cameras recorded every movement the officers would take, including the subtle orders issued and the stillness of the person in front of them. One officer commented, comparing the woman to the figure of La Llorona, and another officer told the rest of the team to stay back and maintain a safe distance. No officer attempted to get closer to the unidentified figure. For an extended period of time, the female appeared as if she was listening, or maybe just waiting, before rising and disappearing beyond the officers' reach to their flashlights. The officers followed her, but soon turned back around. They had no name for what they had just encountered. Solitary Giant, Saskatchewan. The road was engulfed in the sounds of nature going about its business until the high beams of an oncoming vehicle lit up the area and revealed a considerably sized upright creature walking at a relaxed pace. The creature appeared shaggy and thick in its outline, almost as if it belonged in darkness itself, standing a minimum of 8 feet in height with shoulders that were nearly impossible to comprehend. The officer who was operating the vehicle began to understand the feeling of being chilled. However, this chill wasn't because of the temperature outside that had come from North American air, but rather from the giant creature he saw moving towards him. The limbs of this creature moved unnaturally smoothly, while the long arms swung back and forth with intervals equal to the mighty legs on which it traveled. The creature did not react in any way to the approach of the oncoming patrol vehicle, and continued forward without looking back or changing pace. The dashcam video captured some unique flashes of light produced from what appeared to be matted fur lying on the ground when the headlights hit the creature before the creature continued moving forward. In one continuous fluid motion, the creature stepped off the asphalt road, and the trees in the area completely enveloped it. The officer parked and used his searchlight to check the area, but found nothing other than broken tree limbs and a powerful feeling as though he was being watched. This sighting was recorded in the officer's report and identified the officer as a highly seasoned patrol officer. The outline of the creature was not similar to that of any known bear or optical illusion. The orange fur bridge creature. The dashcam of the squad car recorded motion in the distance, a human figure covered in a thick orange fur that appeared to glow from the lights on the patrol car. It looked as though the light was originating within the fur itself, giving off an eerie feeling that pulsed with every breath taken by the animal. The eyes of the animal, when seen momentarily, shone in the patrol lights like polished amber. When approached, it became motionless, as if in shock, and the officers could see that its fur was standing up with each hair, like each was tipped with a bioluminescent material. Then it began to move backward and away from them slowly, very nervously and very carefully, slipping into the bushes. The way it moved indicated much fear and little aggression. Its body structure, fur texture, and movements could not be described to fit any species of animal. The only sound heard on the bridge after the disappearance of the creature was the sound of disturbed leaves, other than the faint glow that could be seen in the air for several moments after it was gone. One officer mentioned that the fluidity of movement and the deliberate nature of how it moved in relation to other animals meant that it was too fluid to be a bear and too deliberate to be a known wild animal. The standoff. The police were surrounding a single figure in the center of the street with their guns pointed at the figure. From the body position of the figure, we can determine that the figure has a stiffened body position likely similar to that of stone or metal, with an elongated body shape and sharp points of facial structure, with wings that are folded behind the body like a rest position for a gargoyle. The figure's skin appears to refract and reflect the light from the street lamps, leading to the conclusion that it has some sort of crystal-like form rather than a biological form. The police have their weapons aimed at the figure, providing a full circle of attention around the figure and no escape route. The figure is also likely to be in a protective position, with the insignia in the lower corner of the scene, indicating that there is likely an unknown commander above. Because of the number of police officers surrounding the figure, numerous reflections can be seen throughout the windows of nearby stores, adding to the amount of tension in the standoff. Witnesses describe the standoff as having lasted forever, with neither party taking the first step to end it.